And all of this points to just one fact, that digitalization is in today's era at a center stage of our climate debate. The success of digital technologies or interventions made on digital technologies is highly dependent on the capacities and the conditions of the developing countries, their digital readiness, as we call. There are a number of examples and cases where in various institutions like GIZ, World Bank, and many other institutions have tried to work on what we call the digital readiness, or the parameters which determine what is the stage of development of digital technologies, or what it will take for a country to move towards development and implementation of digital technologies. This means that we must consider local conditions while we are assessing the application of digital technologies, and identify the barriers. And these barriers could be various, means it could be an infrastructure barriers, but it could also be a kind of a regulatory barrier or a governance issue within the country. And these needs to be identified upfront. Capacity needs to be built up in developing countries so that they can accept these digital technologies and scale up their implementation. Well, there are many more factors to consider, but I will stop here. All of this to say that digital readiness means tackling the digital divide. It means supporting an inclusive and equitable climate action. In this event, which is jointly organized by GIZ and the TEC, we want to stimulate a kind of a debate on the relevance of digital readiness and how we can mainstream supportive interventions on digital technologies, on digital technology projects. We will be introduced to digitalization for climate action by our partner GIZ. We will hear about exciting projects of the CTCN, which the CTCN is doing along with the George Washington University and South Korean National Institute for Green Technologies on developing Digital Readiness Index. We will also present two cases of application of digital technologies through CTCN intervention, one in St. Kitts and Nevis, and the other one in South Africa by GIZ. Thereafter, there would be a panel discussion with colleagues from GIZ, the World Bank, the TEC, and Senegal as a party. This side event is being organized in a hybrid fashion, so there are a number of speakers and there are a number of participants who have joined online. And therefore, taking this opportunity means I'll stop here without further delay, and I'll hand it over to a colleague from GIZ, who is John Giegler, who is working with the digital transformation cluster of the GIZ. This presentation is going to be made online.
Well, thank you very much. I first would really like to thank UNFCCC, CTCN Tech to invite us, and also for great collaboration, not just during this COP, but over the last couple of years, and also the Innovation Hub colleagues. So thank you so much. I wanted just to set the scene. Why is digital so important? What is changing? Not just because of the recent discussion, you might hear about OpenAI and the role of artificial intelligence, but digital can really be a game changer for climate action. So let me please, I wanted to share with you the presentation. So So here you see the first is really the intersection between the green and digital transformation. So here the Paris Agreement really clearly emphasizes the need for innovations and technology as a pull but also push factor. So the green and digital transformation are taking place at the same time, but here the emphasis is really what is the intersection between both. So innovations such as AI, blockchain, IoT, supercomputing provide really unprecedented opportunity to enhance sustainability of the economy and society, but a radical rethinking of existing business models are needed to really address the climate crisis. So, and one of the key challenges hereby is how do we get innovations out of the lab and into the market? That's a key issue. So second is how to scale up innovation. So there's many times a lack of financing for the growth and financing early stage and growth phases of the most innovative solutions.
Hello, can you please unmute yourself? You have muted yourself.
I'm sorry. Thank you. So so basically I was just thank you. So the shaping of the twin transition. So the ICT sector is just about 3 to 4% of the current greenhouse gas emissions, and its potential is much bigger. So about 15 to 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions could be in fact reduced through harnessing digital technologies. So it's about green data, it's about climate impact, and using digital as an enabler for the climate action. So now on the digital economy and the digital readiness. So we've been working a lot with partners from Smart Africa. It's a regional organization in the Africa region, and 38 countries are members of Smart Africa and Digital Equality Association on a digital economy index. So the first aspect is connectivity. So today we still have around 2.6 to 4.7 billion people. So around 40% of the global population still does not have access to internet and connectivity. And the second aspect is beyond beyond connectivity. It's about the usage. So it's the actual usage, and there is a significant gap in terms of affordability and also the usage gap. So basically the 55% of people in Africa who have access to the internet still don't actually use it. So this is also a really important aspect if we talk about digital readiness, is the usage gap. Then moving forward is also the next step is then the capabilities. So the digital and human capabilities, the digital skills to in fact use and take advantage of digital technologies, also for entrepreneurship and innovation. Then there is the aspect of digital services, government service, e-government services, but also by the private sector, and the actual appropriation and uptake of digital technologies. And if all of these steps are being taken, then and only then really digital technologies can have a real important impact on climate action. So now the next
Hello, you have muted again. Unmute yourself, please.
I'm sorry, pardon for that. So the next step is the actual capabilities. So it's not just about the digital skills, but it's about the actual capabilities to use, process data, put it into your own context, and to use these digital technologies for the betterment of society and the economy. So it's about information literacy, communication capability, content capabilities, and digital skills. So this is the concept of informational capabilities, is a holistic approach. It's not just about how to know how to use a computer or like the internet, but actually what do you do with information once you have access to information and data? So how do you process that, and how do you take then decisions?
Muted again.
The second is through a greenhouse gas inventory and national determined contributions. So so here the digital technologies can really enable the measurement, verification, reporting of CO2 emissions and support countries to better monitor the NDCs. Then through the climate financing, and also enhance the transparency and accountability of carbon markets, and so facilitate climate financing. So now 4 priority areas of our concrete work. So the first is to support governments in enabling environment and policy advice for the digital and green transformation. The second is capacity building and technical assistance, raising the awareness of this topic, improving capabilities, and provide technical assistance. Third is to work with a broader innovation ecosystem of research institutions, investors, startups, think tanks, to create this strengthened innovation ecosystem. The fourth is to improve innovation finance and sustainable digital infrastructure for this green digital transformation. And now we move to the second part to highlight some of our programs. So we currently have a program in place of, we work in 50 countries, we have around 180 staff around the world, and we work on these topics to different flagships. So the first one is the data economy program with the support of the BMZ, the German ministry, but also for Development Cooperation and also the European Commission. So here we have this program on the data economy for the Africa region with the African Union, the European Commission, but also the other EU partner countries, Belgium, Finland, Estonia, France, and Germany. And here we work closely on supporting countries through this 60 million euro program in developing data policies, data value creation, supporting the actual use of data cases. You will hear later from our colleague from Kenya, who will share some of the experiences there. Then we support the improvement of green data infrastructure. In South Africa, for instance, there are around 55 to 60 data centers. So a key issue is how do we support also the greening of data centers and improve the sustainability of digital and data infrastructure. And the last aspect is to enhance capacities to the use of data. So here you see the chart about the increase of greenhouse gas emissions in the digital sector, and which is estimated to reach 6 to 7% by 2040. So there is an urgent need to act. The second aspect is that the energy consumption of data centers are as big as the energy consumption of entire countries. As you see here on the chart to the right, for instance, the data centers globally use as much or more energy than the entire all of South Africa. So there is great concern about first enhancing the sustainability of the digital sector itself. So the next is here, this is the greening of the digital infrastructure. Here we work very closely with the World Bank on this program. And it is really, we were closely also integrating with the World Bank digital and green aspects into 11 programs and projects, World Bank funded projects around the world, whereby before the projects basically did not have a climate, clearly defined climate benefit, but now they do, and it's very clear that now the greening of digital is also a key aspect of our work. The second is we have digital transformation centers in 22 countries around the world. So to give one example is we work in the Mobile Innovation Hub in Indonesia. So here the mapping, so I have a little echo now, but so we basically work with GSMA on supporting the use of mobiles for the energy, improving the energy assets and also waste management. And we are showcasing how concretely digital technologies can help. So addressing the current implementation gap. So thanks to the BMZ, we actually currently have a portfolio of 15 million euro where we concretely implement projects that use and leverage digital technologies for climate action on the ground. Like this example, for instance, in Indonesia. We also work in Vietnam, in Mexico, in Senegal, South Africa, Kenya. So to basically have showcase projects that can demonstrate that digital can have a positive impact on climate action. Here's another example is the Lacuna Fund, where we work together also with Rockefeller Foundation, Wellcome Trust, and Canada on basically supporting the use of AI and data for climate action. So sharing of data, best practice AI models, open source, open to everyone, and to do the AI innovation, to do local training of people in the use of data and AI, and enhance in that sense the digital readiness of people to actually use AI for climate action. So improve planning, improve decision making. Another concrete example here is a nutrition early warning system using AI, again, smallholder farmers in rural Africa. So these are very hands-on, very concrete projects where these web apps, mobiles, AI technologies in this case are being used to preventive data on provide predictive climate change mitigations of farmers and to have real-time data and to be more effective and efficient in mitigation measures. So the last project I wanted to share with you is in Indonesia. It's also the high carbon stock approach. So here with the ETH and the HCSA, high carbon stock approach partners, we also work with smallholder farmers, NGOs and local governments in using AI and data for maps and make openly accessible, create broad access to identify actually the ecosystems which can be essential for climate mitigation. So with this, thank you very much. I hand over to you, and I'm very much looking forward to the actual panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Giegler, for a very informative presentation which highlighted various aspects. It provided some case studies and examples of where digitalization or digital technologies, including AI, can be applied. It also had a word of caution of what we need to concentrate with regards to the greening of the data centers. And it also had some parameters which we need to consider while we are trying to define the readiness of a country or the capacity of the country to adopt digital technologies. I would request you to remain online so that you can reply to any questions if there are from the participants here. But now I would like to invite Dr. Shin, Dr. Jong Seok Shin, who is the senior researcher at National Institute of Green Technology, South Korea, and who is implementing one of the I'll say a technical assistance projects of the CTCN on developing digital readiness index. Dr. Shin, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, my name is Jong Seok Shin. I'm from the National Institute of Green Technology in South Korea. While the monitor has to be changed, I'll just briefly introduce what my institute is doing. So we are a government affiliate. We shorten our name as NIGT, and we are a government-affiliated research institute, mostly focusing on policy development and strategy consulting for developing countries and our government also, in the theme of climate change and sustainable development. So recently, actually our institute's former name was the Green Technology Center. Maybe one of you have heard about it. And recently, last year, we have changed our name to NIGT, what we are right now. So now we have this monitor. So yeah, today what I would like to share is about what we are doing related to the digitalization readiness index, and also a very short introduction of what my institute is doing about related to digitalization. So actually I thought I was the first speaker, so I prepared a few slides about what digitalization we are mentioning about and actually what we are thinking. However, as Rajiv also mentioned and Dr. Giggler also introduced very specifically, I'll just move on. So depending on the previous speeches and presentations, we all agree that digitalization is critical and essential. Also, we cannot avoid this kind of paradigm shift, I dare say. And as mentioned previously, it is a kind of game changer and will be a kind of critical opportunity for economic growth and, moreover, sustainable development. However, as we all know, Microsoft, Google, Apple, everybody is trying to contribute or develop something for digital transformation, or in our words, digitalization. However, my question is that are we all, that means everyone, ready for a digital society? In that matter, we can think about the past history about the second industrial revolution, where most of the developed countries, now they are developed countries, were all ready and moving on for industrial revolution. And however, the others, now as they have resulted as a kind of developing country, are left behind, in so words. However, this fourth industrial revolution, what we are thinking as digital transformation, we are not going to leave anyone behind. So in that matter, the question is, are they ready? So if we have a glimpse about current conditions, actually the market related to digitalization, or in other words, e-commerce, is expanding very fast. Especially here, it's a little bit difficult to see, but here the top is Indonesia, and also Asian countries are expanding the e-commerce market very fastly. However, considering the e-government, actually most of the developing countries are lower than 0.5, while the global average is 0.61. And also, considering the market of industrial digitalization, most of the leading groups are the developed countries, where the others, developing countries, are trying to follow as fast as they can. So, however, as Dr. Stigler has mentioned, digitalization is very useful and have many benefits. And this is not only for economic growth, but also for climate change and pursuing sustainable development. So many may agree that to cope with climate change and sustainable development, the basic foundation should be a kind of economic growth or having any kind of contribution to economic growth. And also, this kind of digitalization digitalization can provide these kind of economic values for creating a new one compared to the conventional economic values. Moreover, digitalization strives to improve the efficiency and also the effectiveness in coping with climate change and also sustainable development. And not only for this kind of efficiency matters or other kind of things, in society, this digital technologies can also help for the vulnerable or the weak ones, the inequitable, that we can consider all, not only the following or the strong groups. And also, not the last but not the least, this digitalization or digital technologies help us develop solutions. That is, in other words, technical innovation to cope with climate change. So actually, I was thinking to make it more shorter about the first part, but anyway, it's expected time length. And as Rajiv has mentioned, CTCN, based on the CTCN's recent program of work, the two enablers are the National Innovation System and digitalization. So for us, focusing on digitalization, we are trying to develop a National Digitalization Readiness Index. So what this index will do is that we are aiming to develop an evaluation framework that can measure the current conditions of the target country, mostly developing countries, and identify a baseline. So to see what should the country focus first to achieve the most effective, to achieve digitalization most efficiently and effectively. So here the research team is composed by two institutes, the National Institute of Green Technology, where I am affiliated, and also the George Washington University. Right now, we have started this project last August. So from then, it has been 3 to 4 months. And now we are currently mostly in the literature review stage to find what kind of things that we can use or refer for developing the evaluation framework. So as a start, we have focused on the definition, or in other words, we can maybe say it as the concept of digitalization. However, the term is used very confusingly as digitization. It is quietly comparable that we can divide it with what we are going to say. But however, digitalization or digital transformation, there seems to be some kind of difference, but actually it's not that clear to divide these two concepts. So based on our literature review, we can derive the major concept and their focus may be as known as the fundamental strategy for digitalization, and digital transformation. So as a result, from digitization, actually it goes more larger to digital transformation. And here, actually what we are talking about in our study is about the middle one, digitalization. So this digitalization can be considered that we are in a very early starting stage, and what we are pursuing or aiming to move on may be the digital transformation. So we have identified the differences in these terminologies, and through other literature review, we have derived, it is preliminary, but we derived some kind of insights that I would like to say. Here, actually, these 6 insights are very common. So the first 2 are related to infrastructure, digital infrastructure and physical infrastructure. The middle one is related to about the regulations or policies that can support and accelerate digitalization in the country. The other 2, accessibility or digital skills, may be related to the society and the personnel about how well they can use, for example, digital literacy. The last one is related to the regulations or the governance. That means the surrounding environment to protect the data that has been collected or used. These may consider to be very common or obvious things. However, the literature review results also show that these all need to be considered. So from starting on here, our research team is going on to identify the pillars in maybe a couple of months. And based on that result, we are going to develop the evaluation framework. So here is the brief timeline. So here, right now we are at stage 1, and because actually we lack of time for the project, we are going on parallel. So as I mentioned in the previously, we are first focusing on the energy field, about how are we going to do it. So about the unique characteristics about the energy system, we are reviewing it on also. And also looking for what kind of data that can be used that is currently being collected in the energy system. So as a result, maybe this end of May is the end of the project, and we are thinking that the first draft evaluation project maybe be derived during April next year. So this is a brief introduction about our National Digitalization Readiness Index. And along with that, just going a little bit side, I would like to introduce briefly about what my institute is doing about related to support digitalization. So this is our vision that has been mentioned, has been developed this year. So we are trying to be Korea's and globally green innovative action tank and also a think tank. So here, what I want to emphasize is that we have 2 keywords that we are emphasizing. First is data-driven. So that means we are trying to develop policies or doing any kind of consultations or planning projects based on data mostly. And based on this data-driven or objective results, we are trying to do international cooperation. So among this, depending on these 2 keywords, our institute has one center, a center for data and information. Here, this year, we are making a foundation to develop 3 kind of platforms that works in kind of one platform. First one is CTIS. We shorten it as CITIS. Here provides domestic and international climate news that comes out and provides various stakeholders the latest news about them. And the second one is named as Planet, which provides more specific and professional technology information to help the developers or researchers to use it for technology innovation. all of the data collected by these two platforms and other kind of data that has been generated by our institute are collected together here in the so-called data archive. Here that we are going to systemize these kinds of data and try to provide so-called every kind of data that we can provide here in a very systematic and efficient way. So this is what we are trying to do. Actually, we have now made the skeletons of these three platforms, and next year we are thinking to fill in the actual data to these three platforms to support the technology developers and policymakers. Okay, this is all that I have. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Shin, for your excellent presentation, which provides a kind of a framework what we are working on for digital technologies as CTCN. And also it was fascinating to know the technology CTCN, the Korean technology database system or knowledge system which you are developing, which probably could be put to a wider use through our cooperation, between the CTCN and NIGT. Thank you for that. Dear colleagues, we have two case studies, again, which is going to be, one of them is from St. Kitts and Nevis, which is going to be presented in person, while the other one from South Africa is going to be virtually presented. I would like to invite Ms. Jeffers from the Ministry of Environment, Climate Action and Constituency Empowerment, St. Kitts and Nevis, to present the case studies on how digital technologies have been used using the CTCN technical assistance. Ms. Jeffers, the floor is yours.
Pleasant good afternoon, all. Pleasant good afternoon, all. It's my pleasure to present on behalf of the Ministry of Environment, Climate Action to the Government of St. Kitts and Nevis in our transformational processes as it relates to our preparing ourselves for digital transformation. I recognize the time is of the essence, so I will move through a few of the slides and go straight to the essence in terms of the project. So just to give, before I do that though, just to set some context in terms of St. Kitts and Nevis, it's a small island developing state, very small. As you'd recognize, our population is just over 50,000 in terms of population between St. Kitts and Nevis, with a combined square feet in terms of 261 square kilometers. Now, in terms of our project specifically towards the technical assistance that we would have received through CTCN, it was water-based, and in terms of the rationale, in 2015 for St. Kitts and Nevis, I know many other countries have continuously been experiencing drought, but for St. Kitts and Nevis, we got what we call a reality shock, where we experienced our first real drought in 2015 that allowed for water rationing. And outside of that, we recognize that because of our economic driver being tourism, there was a competition in terms of how do we allocate our water resources. And so we recognize that we needed to make better informed decisions to inform all of our ministries in terms of our allocation in terms of water resources. So specifically as it relates to this particular project, there were 4 key outputs I would identify, and I'm particularly pleased coming back from the presentation that was just presented, because as it relates to our digital awareness, one of the outputs spoke about mapping of our stakeholder consultations, and based on the outputs coming out of that, we were able to understand, are we really ready for that digital transformation? And I will go through in terms of our constraints as a part of this project to highlight and to respond to that particular question. But so the first thing was to map our stakeholder consultations. to do a general assessment in terms of our drought water resources, because that will then determine the type of data that we have available to see how far that the project can actually go in terms of its implementation. And based on that assessment, we will then design a drought prediction model that is applicable for St. Kitts and Nevis. And of course, a critical component of this was capacity building to empower the users of the drought tool to be able to implement the project. It will be remiss of me to, of course, not express our sincere gratitude to the CTCN, to the Climate Innovation Accelerator. We were one of the countries that was funded through the AFCA project, and our consultants who has developed that particular tool, which was HR Wallingford. So specifically as relates to the drought tool model, what it does basically, the consultants would have collected information from key stakeholders, the Water Services Department, Department of Agriculture, our ministry with responsibility for climate action, use our weather station observation information, and based on that information, they would then determine how ready are we to actually develop a drought prediction model. We recognized in the implementation that we had, like many small and developing states, or most, if not all, and including developing countries, access to data to feed into this particular model would have been a particular challenge. And so what the consultants would have done, they would have used satellite imagery to help us to at least have some information that can feed into this particular tool. In terms of innovation and creativity, what they have done, it is not a closed-off tool. It has allowed us, even though we have had challenges in terms of data, it is open source, so it allows, so each time the satellite imagery is updated, it shows updated information. And it also allows us as a country to identify what the challenges are and to build projects subsequent to this particular technical assistance to address our data challenges. So this basically gives you a snapshot in terms of what the data basically looks like. So in terms of stakeholder consultations, we would have had consultations with the Ministry of Agriculture, recognizing that it is now a water scarce commodity. And so the farmers would need that information to be determined how much water is actually available, what is our predictions in terms of our rainfall precipitation, which will allow them to make better informed decisions in terms of what to plant, when to harvest, and when not to harvest based on the water requirements on any particular crop. So in terms of challenges, of course, as I indicated, access to reliable data continues to be a challenge for small island developing states, both as it relates to meteorological information and also hydraulical information. We recognize also in terms of the innovation that was presented to us, we require additional time to accept and incorporate new technologies, because as was indicated, we looked at in terms of not only the stakeholder consultations, but do we have the necessary legislative framework to incorporate the type of data that is actually required? And of course, the cost of technology. One of the things we recognize coming out of the project, each ministry collects different information. We need to ensure that there's some sort of homogeneity in terms of the type of data that is collected, the state in which it is collected, the quality of the data, and the reliability of the data. As was indicated earlier, data is what drives decisions, and so we need to improve on our data collection to improve also on this particular tool. But with our challenges, it creates opportunities, and so we are happy to report that one of the information that we have presented since this particular technical assistance is access to additional resources, and we have now been implementing a project to develop what we call a water information system, where the same stakeholders that were consulted in this particular project, we now have a stakeholder working group where we have now recognized this is the type of data that is required to feed into this particular tool, to build onto this particular project. It also provides an opportunity to improve our data collection, and the water information system is one such area. Through this particular project, it showed us that we really need to include and incorporate and to enhance our coordination. We recognized through the particular project as well, water services was what you say doing their own thing, agriculture was doing their own thing, but if we really need to make that game changer as was indicated, we really need to move in a more coordinated and synergistic approach. So for us, and I just want to say earlier in terms of the key areas that is required for us to be really ready, one thing I can probably say that in terms of that political will from St. Kitts and Nevis is there. St. Kitts and Nevis is now on a sustainable island state agenda, and center of that particular sustainable island state agenda is digital innovation. We recognize that these are 6 key pillars that we require, and it talks about social protection, including the circular economy, sustainable settlements, sustainable industry, but all of this points right back to the center in terms of we need to ensure that we have the data that feeds into this particular process towards addressing our sustainable island state agenda. So I thought this was particularly useful in terms of some of our key barriers, but for us, in terms of that political will, we can say that it is there. In terms of key takeaways, we have recognized that if we really want to shift towards an operational drought forecasting system, we need to have continuous collection of ground-based data. And this is where our water information system will lend support to our challenges that was recognized in this particular project. It also speaks about the need to have more participation and collaboration intraministerially as it relates to organizations and well as agencies. And of course, as we recognize, as we'll talk about digital transformation, capacity building resonates right within the center in terms of digital transformation. There are different types of technologies that are out there. We need to ensure that there's some sort of homogeneity towards these particular different types of information. Documentation, sharing of lessons, experiences, and best practices, we feel add value to this particular process. And so we feel engagements such as this, and in terms of the Latin American Climate Week where we participated, and listening to our peers allows us to learn in terms of what other countries are doing and how we can share our experiences and lose in terms of best practices. And sustainability. It is resolved by addressing our problems in a way that is relevant to local communities. Just before I close, I just wanted to highlight that based on the 2 presentations that I've seen, for us to be fully digitally ready, we need to incorporate governance, as was indicated. The technology, we've started that process, but of course we do recognize that we will have some challenges, but we are ready to address those challenges by looking at subsequent projects to respond to those data gaps. In terms of sustainability, accessibility, and compatibility will allow us, perhaps in the next iteration of questions, are we digitally ready? We can say somewhat we are there, we've started that process, but of course it requires continuous work and engagement to ensure that at the end of the day, we are at the forefront of digital transformation. That is the end of my presentation, and I allow any questions after the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jeffers. Now I would like to invite or hand over the floor for an online presentation to Sandy Maseko, who is the coordinator of Digital Transformation Center, and the case study is from Kenya. So please excuse my earlier statement that the case study is from South Africa. The case study is from Kenya. The floor is yours. The floor is yours, Sandy, but in the interest of time, what I would really like to request you is to finish off your presentation and intervention in less than 8 minutes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. My name is Bernard Mugendi. I work as part of the data economy team based at the Digital Transformation Center in Nairobi. I apologize that my colleague from South Africa could not be able to join today due to a last-minute commitment or request, but I'll just briefly highlight in terms of what we are doing in leveraging, how do we leverage the various digital technologies for data and climate action. I know a lot perhaps in the earlier presentation by Dr. Zoran, he's mentioned part of what I'm going to speak about and how we work very closely with our stakeholders from the public sector and also from the private sector as well. And in here we see in terms of how we set up our cooperation model, or how we set up the program. And for the Global Digital Transformation Center, this is an existing network of various DTCs. We refer to them as DTCs in short, that is existing now in at least 22 countries. And here we contribute further to the development of digital ecosystems. And here we not only support the government, but we also work hand in hand with various partners, especially from the non-profit and from the public sector as well, to improve or to support the idea of digital transformation. And we have various thematic considerations, and we have various thematic topics, starting from cybersecurity to digital government, to digital health, and digital skills. Looking at how do we specifically focus on, how do we specifically leverage on this diverse team of experts to provide support. Here we see in terms of, we break down the support in 4 major categories. There is policy, there is the development of use cases. I'm going to skip a little bit on policy because of time. I think the previous speaker has also talked about it in terms of how we can really leverage on the various policy mechanisms to provide technical assistance, but I'm going to just briefly speak about the use cases. And in here, when we talk about use cases, really we're trying to look at how can we provide, how do we process data from a raw material to an asset that is capable of providing social and economic value. And this is now the basis of even what was presented earlier of what our program is all about, using the power of data to provide economic value. And now we know that based on what we are currently seeing, at least, and the requests that we are currently receiving, we know that digital transformation does not necessarily, we don't have to cut corners. There are various mechanisms that are in place, and we have seen a lot of interest in this area, trying to see in terms of how can we develop use cases or products that are really focusing also really on leveraging the power of use cases that are sustainable. And we know that the development, and this starts very early from the development phase, whereby we use a very a participatory approach with considerations or with various ideation phases, from leveraging on what the partners are working on, leveraging on what is existing in the ecosystem, and now looking in the looking ahead and really asking the question in terms of how can we leverage or use the power of data and to promote this concept of a green or digital transition. And based on the various requests from our partner organizations and from our partner ministry, we have also gone ahead to also provide various mechanisms in terms of building the capacity. I mean, right now, there are various conversations around developing, monitoring an MRE, various MRE systems that tracks this agenda or this idea of digital readiness. How can we transition from how can we transition from, even in the mobility sector, in terms of how can we transition from the gas emitting to more electric and more sustainable approaches? And these are some of the initiatives that we are continuously receiving and we are continuously supporting. And of course, now, other than developing various use cases and providing capacity, we also focus on supporting the ecosystem, the green and digital ecosystem. And here we provide expertise and advisory services, leveraging on the individual term of experts, from data experts to digital to infrastructure experts to even more climate-focused experts. And in here, this is one of the use cases that we have also done in the area of agriculture, in terms of looking at developing an interoperable data infrastructure. And this is the agricultural sector data gateway, which now specifically focuses, here we focused on supporting the partner here in terms of the building an MVP, a minimum viable product for us securing the interoperable data infrastructure. And this is a platform that essentially provides quality data and analytical capabilities for the government and also for the various partners as well, in terms of providing them with the ability to better support production and provide farmers and other stakeholders in the ecosystem with better intelligence, now geared towards sustainable infrastructure and geared towards food security. because of time, I'll also just move on and just highlight in terms of now looking at what is a concept for Africa, or where we are at the time. Most of the Africa, or at least for Kenya specifically, for the now looking at power generation, Kenya can be described as green by default, because most of its power sources comes from its hydrogen. It's more sustainable, and sorry, it's more renewable. It comes from renewable energy, and this is now one of the questions that we are looking at. How can we leverage on what is existing and also promote the development of more sustainable, or at least leverage this to promote the same in the various countries, essentially. And here we look at where we are at the moment and looking ahead. And for infrastructure, we are mostly focusing on data, and we know that 60% of the population, of the African population, is mostly youth. And so we are going to see a growing appetite of data, a growing appetite of setting up infrastructure to meet the growing demands of this digital economy. And one of the things that we have done, and this was during the climate summit, is we were able to work with various partners from the World Bank and ITU, with support from the GIZ's Digital Transformation Program, and to support the launch of the guide to green data centers. A lot has been mentioned in terms of what green data centers means, or what, from an infrastructure perspective, the energy, when you talk about the real question here, when you talk about data centers, is we know that there's a lot of power, power that is needed. And here we look at various concepts. We look at power sustainability, we look at water sustainability, we look at the gas emitting factor of such infrastructures at scale. And so this is one of the things that we are continuously doing from a policy perspective. Launch the guideline as a first step, and then see in terms of now how can we promote the investment of such infrastructures. And so now this now focuses now on investments. We launched the guide, at least from a policy perspective. We are continuously having conversations with various partners and trying to see in terms of how can we now promote the investment and getting more partners involved in this. And this is now part of the new action that Dr. Zorin also mentioned about a digital investment facility, now focusing specifically on green and digital infrastructure. And what is in it for member states, or what can they leverage on from this facility that is now set up in three sectors in Africa. There's one in Kenya, one in South Africa, and Senegal as well. And the purpose of this investment facility is to promote and advisory services, or provide partners with an idea in terms of developing